So how Singapore gets so rich? In 2021, Singapore GDP per capita was $72k, the fourth largest in the world. It ranks second in the East doing business. Singapore's economic growth has been phenomenal. It teaches many lessons for countries that want to bring their people from poverty to prosperity. Singapore was not always developed economic as it is today. A few decades ago, it was a poor economy with no natural resources and small population. To understand how Singapore got so rich, we need to know the economic challenges they faced in the earlier days of economic development. From 1890 to 1960, Singapore was a British colony. This small island was crucial for Britishers because of its geographical location. It served as a trade connection between Asia and Europe, which helped the British to transport goods from Asia to Europe. The British left Singapore in 1960s. Its economy was in ruin. At the time, most Singaporeans were employed by the British administration. So when the British left, it put most Singaporeans out of jobs, which created high unemployment. The first elected Prime Minister of the Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, wanted Singapore to merge with Malaysia to develop its economy. Singapore has no natural resources and was dependent on water and food supply from abroad. Lee Kuan Yew wanted that Singaporean could escape poverty was to merge with Malaysia. In 1963, a lot of effort by Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore officially merged with Malaysia. But the unification was short-lived. On 9 August 1965. Malaysia expelled Singapore from the federation and forced it to declare independence. Some reason for this expulsion were racial tensions and political disagreement between Singaporean and Malaysian. Likewise, economic differences were the reasons why Singapore had expelled from Malaysia. As a part of Malaysian agreement, Singapore had agreed to contribute 40% of its total revenue to the federal government. But in July 1965, the Malaysian finance minister increased the contribute to 60% and hinted that unless Singapore agrees to pay more, the common market would be slow in coming about. Singapore's finance minister refused to do and accused Kuala Lumpur on imposing tariff on Singapore-made products. At the time, Singapore didn't want to independent, but it was expelled from Malaysia and forced to declare independence. When people think of achieving economic growth, what comes to mind is privatizing businesses and a free market system with a little government intervention. But Singapore's economic model was different from the traditional free market system. Singapore is a blend of a free market and high government intervention, which proved to be very successful for the Singapore economy. So let's learn the causes behind Singapore economy success and can other country copy the system to achieve the same economic growth. So why Singapore very successful now? Because they fight the corruption. Lee Kuan Yew was the first Prime Minister of Singapore from 1959 to 1990. He knew if Singapore wanted foreign business to invest and employ Singaporeans, it had to clean up all the corruption from businesses, bribery, government officials to regular people bribing officers. The government imposed strict laws that made corruption almost impossible. Lee Kuan Yew was willing to go to any length to eliminate corruption in order to attract many business investor in their country. Today, Singapore is the most transparent nation in Asia, and the public sector has shrunk as the fourth least corrupt in the world. Eliminating corruption from the country helps Singapore to achieve this miraculous growth. When a country has no corruption, it can influence economic growth because business will tend to invest in country where they want have to bribe government officials to do business. There are some common characteristics among poorer economies. They tend to have more corruption in their system, which prevent them from achieving economic growth. Singapore fight against corruption, and the first step for achieving economic growth in the economy. So Lee Kuan Yew impose low tax rate in their country in order to attract many investors in their country, in order to achieve a successful country and city. Low tax rate attracted much foreign business into Singapore, which increased the foreign direct investment in the economy. As more companies invest in the economy, it boosts economic growth. Singapore income and corporate tax rates are half of are in the United States, when people know that the most of income will be in their hands. It gives people an incentive to increase productivity, to increase their income. As their income grows, they will consume more, improves the overall economy. In 1960s, the most economies had high taxes. Lee Kuan Yew retained low tax rate to attract foreign business to invest in Singapore. Most companies were reluctant to invest in countries where they have to pay most of their earnings to the government. High taxes rates tend to decrease foreign direct investment into country, which negatively impact economic growth. So their secret is one of the secret of Singapore is their education in Singapore, because Singapore government was giving low tax rates, fighting aggressively eliminate corruption to make their company attractive to the foreign business, so business will invest the country, employ in Singaporeans and improve economic growth. But Lee Kuan Yew knew that attracting foreign business to come here and employ Singaporeans was only possible if the people in the country are well educated and the technical knowledge that foreign companies went in their employees. Business will hire individuals who have specialized education that the companies could benefit from. The government knew that its most valuable asset was its people. If the administration invests heavily in their people and educate them, it could help improve their economy. Which society to be successful must maintain a balance between nurturing excellence and encouraging the average to improve. So that's why for more than 50 years, the government efforts to recruit the best teachers from around the world to educate its citizens and increase their human capital paid. Today, Singapore has one of the best education in the world. Ranking published by OECD, its program for international students survey PISA had repeatedly placed Singapore in the top 5 ranked countries in education outcome. Within the subject of math science, Singapore was ranked number 1 in the global rankings in 2016 and frequently outsmart other Asian giants like Japan or Taiwan. That's why the Singapore has economic growth.